Okay, I am going to go ahead and get started to respect everybody's time. So first, I would like to say welcome everybody to our May U.S. Chagas Providers Network session. We are very excited about our speaker today. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you guys that these sessions do provide CME. And so if you would like to take advantage of that, you just send this attendance code VACSUM, you text it to this phone number here, and I'll put this information in the chat a little bit later as well. So if you guys want to take a picture of this, you certainly can, but I'm also going to put the information in the chat. During the talk today, please feel free to put comments in the chat. And we will, of course, have a question and answer session with our speaker at the end as well. So without further ado, I want to introduce our speaker today. So we have Dr. Maria do Carmo Pereira Nunez, who is a cardiologist and a full professor at the Federal University of Minas Gerais. Her research focuses on Chagas disease and cardiovascular imaging, and she's a co-investigator in the NIH-funded SAMI-TROP study, which you're going to hear a lot about today. So I will let Dr. Pereira Nunez take it over. The floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Eva, for the presentation. It's a great pleasure to be here today to talk about Chagas disease. And I will share my screen. I hope everyone can see. It's okay?
They look great.
Okay. Just to try to minimize this. Okay. And today we are talking about evaluation the impact of benzonidazole treatment on myocardial inflammation in Chagas disease using new cardiovascular images, including resonance and PET-CT. Chagas disease remains a major neglected tropical disease that still affects millions of people and main cause of infectious myocarditis. It leads to premature death, and nowadays it still have a limited access to diagnosis and adequate treatment. The global landscape of Chagas disease is related nowadays is more related to large-scale migration that shift the geographic distribution of the disease, now recognized as an emergency global health concern. It's not just in endemic countries, but now included non-endemic countries, especially in the United States and Europe. An estimated 6 million people are infected worldwide, but this number can be observed, can be higher than this, and up to 30% of infected individuals will develop the most severe complication, which is Chagas cardiomyopathy. Which are the challenges in Chagas disease control? We have a high prevalence of silent asymptomatic infections, and that's why we miss the early treatment. We are able to diagnose Chagas disease at the late stage with symptoms of heart failure. And low awareness among healthcare providers. And this leads to underreporting and also a misclassification of Chagas-related death because it's underreporting. This leads to limited visibility in public health agents and need for improved screening, diagnosis, and policy attention. This is a slide is from our friend Karen Baird from New England Journal of Medicine to show the natural history of Chagas disease. After the acute phase, we enter to a chronic phase, but the most severe complications are Chagas cardiomyopathy, that is an inflammatory dilated cardiomyopathy associated with high mortality rates and cause heart failure, embolic events, especially stroke, can be the first clinical presentation of Chagas disease and sudden death. And this type of cardiomyopathy have a specific feature, have worse prognosis compared to the other type of dilated cardiomyopathy, include ischemic cardiomyopathy, has extensive myocardial fibrosis, which leads a high complexity of ventricular arrhythmias. And Chagas disease can be classified into different stages according to the presence of symptoms, electrocardiographic abnormalities, and left ventricular function. Stage A is an indeterminate form, and stage B, we start with minor electrocardiographic changes, but still normal ventricular function, no symptoms. Stage B, we start with left ventricular decreased ejection fraction and ECG abnormalities, and C is the presence of symptoms related to heart failure, and D is a severe heart failure and despite of clinical treatment. This classification is follow the same classification heart failure adapted for Chagas cardiomyopathy. How we can control the progression of the disease to severe cardiomyopathy? It is the main question. In this echo imaging on the left side here, we can see clearly patients with dilated cardiomyopathy and apical aneurysm, and a pacemaker lead can be seen right side chambers. And is another case, we can see dilation of apical region. It's an apical aneurysm, which is a hallmark of Chagas disease. By using a speckle track strain, which is a tool to quantify ventricular contractility across each component of ventricular segment, we are able to define well the ventricular contractility. In this case, you can see severe ventricular function, dysfunction. So, although the pathogenesis of Chagas disease is still under investigation, there is a consensus now that the myocardial inflammation plays a major role in cardiomyopathy pathogenesis. And the point is, the persistency of the parasite is the primary driven of disease progression. And this is the base for etiological treatment that reduce the parasite load and may reduce inflammation. However, the disease takes time to progress, usually slowly over time. So we are not able to see markers of the treatment response well. That's why we propose to use high sensitivity cardiac images techniques as a surrogate mark of clinical response. It is a study from our project, SUMTROP project. We analyze the incidence and predicts of progression to Chagas cardiomyopathy. In this study published Circulation to 2021, this is interesting to see because we select patient blood donors without cardiomyopathy at the baseline visit. We select seronegative as a control of seropositive individuals, follow them up for 10 years. It's important to have a control because you have cardiovascular risk factors to heart disease. And at the end of the follow-up, we detect that new onset cardiomyopathy occur 3 times higher in those with positive compared to those with negative serological testing, adjusted for the several risk factors for heart disease. So More important, this study, we analyzed that the trypanosoma cruzi antibody level was associated with development of cardiomyopathy. These antibody levels may reflect the parasite load. And there's another study of Sumtrop showed that patients treated with benzonidazole has low mortality rate at 2 years follow-up compared to those untreated. And then to answer this question, our ongoing study in the Sumtrop project, NIH funded, that included 21 municipalities from Minas Gerais state in Brazil. Here is a Brazil map, and this is the north of Minas Gerais. Is a high endemic area of Chagas disease. We select a cohort of patients has undergone treatment and been monitored with intensive protocols to imaging to assess treatment response and also identify biomarkers of disease progression, mortality, and response to the treatment. To do so, we use different steps in this study, analyze serologic and parasitologic evaluation, inflammatory biomarkers, clinical evaluation, and ECG, conventional echo, SpectraTrack strain, and then we analyze a high sensitivity cardiac images using resonance and PET-CT. Why the resonance is important to assess the response to the treatment? By using new techniques, late gadolinium erasement is already established detected myocardial fibrosis strongly correlate with adverse prognosis. But this may be a late stage of myocarditis. By using T1, T2 mapping, maybe we are able to detect early stage of myocardial involvement. T1 mapping, native T1, measure the longitudinal relaxation time of myocardium. It's associated with increased collagen, fibrosis, or infiltration, but can detect subtle or diffuse myocardial change even without late gadolinium erasement. Or that means we are able to detect in the early stage of fibrosis. And T2 mapping measures transverse relaxation time that reflects free water content in tissue that identify myocardial edema and active inflammation. And extracellular volume estimates the proportion of myocardial tissue that is in the extracellular space and reflects the combined effects of fibrosis and inflammation. It is a study to assess the impact of benzimidazole on myocardial inflammation. It's the first study that includes patients eligible for treatment. And we check again the serological tests. Patients should be asymptomatic with no symptom or signs of heart failure. And echocardiograph with normal, or we also include patients with mild left ventricular dysfunction. We exclude those who have atrial fibrillation or cardiac device, that's a mark of late disease stage, and other cardiac or inflammatory conditions. For this study, 63 patients are eligible, 57 included, and finished the treatment, 53 completed treatment. At the baseline, we have a cardiac resonance, and after 6 months at the end of the treatment, that means 8 months from the baseline, we just repeat all the exams. The overall characteristic of the study population is 53 years old, more females. The majority of patients are in indeterminate form, but 23 in the mild cardiac disease. The transmission form is more vector-borne transmission, 95%. When analyzed the echocardiograph parameters pre and post treatment, we can see the normal left ventricular ejection fraction that did not change with the treatment, and normal diastolic function, normal right ventricular function. The conventional echo parameters is also unchanged with treatment. When analyze the resonance, you can see the standard parameters like volumes and ejection fraction continue the same, but T1 mapping, T2 mapping reduce the relaxation time of the tissue, decrease in T1 map, decrease significant from 1004 to 1017, and T2 mapping also decrease, and extracellular volume also decrease. In this example here, patients T1 mapping, you can see in this area here, in septal region, that relaxation time decreased from almost 1,000 to 882. And also T2 mapping, you can see that in this disease, the mark is in septal region. You can see the decrease in this time post-treatment compared to the pre-treatment. The question is, although the overall the mean of the values reduce, we need to identify each group different type of response to the treatments. To do so, we classify patients using principal component analysis that use all these three important variables of the resonance to identify the key components that drive the responses. And we identify like three groups. Group one is those that respond very high responders that decrease too much the T1 mapping. Group 2 has an intermediate response, and group 3, 70 patients, the time is the same or even increase in some patients. And this is the characteristic based on PCA analysis that the group that respond, intermediate, and high group. The question is why the patients responding and other patients did not. Those who have better response to the treatment are those who have high values at the pre, like the T1 mapping pre, you see high values in both in T1 and T2 and extracellular volume. And call our attention those who where high response has compared the difference between post and pre, you have a high difference in this group. This is, we can extrapolate and see this patient had more inflammation, they're more abnormal exam before the treatment. We also try to correlate biomarker with the cardiac resonance response. We identified 19 cytokines that have a p-value left 5% here that are correlated with this response. The outcome is the group 1, the high responders compared to the others. And also all these cytokines are highly correlated among them, except for 2 then. And analyze isolatedly the cytokines, we can see the majority of them are high in the group 1 compared to the group 2 and 3. And the final analysis using lasso regression, because we have multicollinearity between the cytokines, we identify the 3 cytokines, EL12, MCP3, and PDGF, as the 3 cytokines involved to identify high responders. In conclusion of this study, 33% of the patients were classified as high responder by PCA that demonstrates significant improvement in myocardial tissue characteristics, reduced T1 and T2 times, and associated with elevated EL12, MCP, and PDGF level, identify potential biomarkers of treatment response. And continue to analyze this, the rationale to use the PET-CT to evaluate the benzodiazole treatment, that persistent infection contributes to the chronic myocardial inflammation. And the FDG is enabled to non-invasively detection of metabolic activity of the tissue and active inflammation. This is able to quantify treatment response by measuring changes in FDG uptake. That's able to identify residual inflammation burden despite parasite clearance with treatment. And PET-CT offers a promising biomarker-based approach to evaluate therapeutic efficacy in these cases. For this study, this takes place in Hospital das Clínicas, a tertiary center, because we need to have PET-CT and resonance. In adult patients with Chagas eligible for treatment, the sample size is 76. We have a visit one baseline. All these exams included the images, cardiac images, and bezafibrate treatment takes 2 months. And at the visit to 8 months after the started treatment, we just repeat all these exams to assess myocardial inflammation and in order to try to identify some biomarkers related to response to the treatment. And this is a PET-CT assessment. We should have a region of interest that is identified on the scan. In this case, in the yellow here, you can see the myocardial trace here. And how to calculate this? What's the measure of the FDG uptake? Is a SUV, the standard uptake value, that reflects the metabolic activity or inflammation level in a specific tissue. The formula is, we should analyze the tissue reactivity concentration divided by the injected doses and by weight. This is preliminary results of 31 patients that we have PET-CT before and 6 months after treatment. The mean age is 58 and 61 were male. And we should compare to the increased uptake of FDG in liver compared to the heart. But the preliminary results show this ratio is very important, cardio and liver ratio. If you have high captation in the cardiac high uptake compared to the liver, means that you should have active inflammation in the heart. You can see here in the preliminary results that this ratio is higher pre that reduced in the post treatment. Just now I'll show some examples. In these patients, is a young patient, the terminal form of Chagas disease. There's a normal CT, and at baseline before the treatment, you can see here the yellow arrow here in the septal region, apical, and the lateral. We have an increased FDG uptake, and you can see by PET here. And this is a color scale that enable us to see the degree of uptake. So you can see the septum, also apical in the lateral wall. And after 6 months after treatment, it's clear decrease FDG uptake in both the septum and also lateral. This is the same patients in different level. You can see, although in the terminal form, all the exams are normal, the metabolic activity is high, because especially in lateral wall here, that reduce clearly in the PET 6 months after treatment. This is another case that is no heart disease, but have a megaesophagus. You can see the hydroaerial fluid displayed here. Before the treatment, you can see no uptake of FDG here. And you can see by the color here is the ventricular wall has no uptake. Compared to the post that continue the same. That means the patients have a digestive form, no myocardial uptake, that continue the same. And just another case is very interesting because it's a patient that has a mild cardiac form, but is doing well. The PET-CT before the treatment, you get so no uptake, and use clearly, you can see here. But this patient, right after the treatment, developed atrial block that requires pacemaker implantation. You can see the part of the pacemaker here, and the PET-CT of control 6 months after, which that you can appreciate here that increased FDG uptake in septum and also lateral wall. This means that patients, clinically, this patient progressed to arrhythmias, and the PET-CT also showed this type of change in myocardial uptake. It's the same patients that you can see a focal inflammation that there isn't in the baseline, and in the septum you can see a focal area of increased uptake. So the changes in radiotracing uptake post-treatment. In the overall patients so far, 50% of the patients show a reduction in myocardial FDG uptake. 18 has no detect uptake before treatment, which remain unchanged post-treatment. However, 32 patients show increased uptake. We are following them up to clinical, try to correlate these image changes with the clinical outcomes. This is an interesting case here. The last week, I just get this image to see before the treatment, patient has no, basically has no FDG uptake, and you can calculate here with SUV 4.5 and the ratio cardiac level 1.25. And the 6-month follow-up, this SUV increase, cardiac level increase, and you see clearly the increase in capitation here in the yellow arrow. And this patient also increase heart size measured by here. But the patient clinically, now we try to see if have progressed with new ECG or decreased left ventricular ejection fraction, try to correlate these images findings with clinical outcomes. In summary, we try to address knowledge gaps in Chagas disease treatment, especially to identify biomarkers of treatment response, apply new cardiac images techniques to detect myocardial inflammation as outcome surrogate, but they still have potential confound effects in image interpretation that maybe you have some health controls to analyze them. And the idea is to correlate image finds with clinical outcomes for the facial biomarkers correlation with response treatment. We use this population to define which biomarkers correlate with treatment response, and then validating the large population, because this type of high sensitive cardiac images are not available in remote areas for overall Chagas disease population. This is Carlos Chagas, a Brazilian research that discovered Chagas disease in Minas Gerais state, like Chagas disease from our state. And the original report in 1909 is unique in the history of medicine, in the sense that a single scientist described in great details both the cycle of transmission, vector, host, and novel infectious organism, and the acute clinical manifestation of the first human cases. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. That was a very interesting presentation. At this point, I would like to open it up for questions. Everybody, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or put questions in the chat. I see, Hector, you're unmuted, but I can't tell if you're trying to talk or not.
Hi, how are you? Sorry, I was in a patient. Good afternoon. Great conference. Really enjoyed it. Thank you, Eva, for the invitation and congratulations because it's a great talk. I was not able to see through the slides about CMR, unfortunately, but I was wondering if despite I didn't see them, I apologize. If you think that the T2 mapping versus STEER are good parameters to assess either progression disease or success in treatment. And again, wonderful talk. Thank you so much.
Oh, wait, Carmita, you're muted.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for your question. I think the idea is we use T1 and T2 mapping just to better understand the response to the treatment and correlate with blood biomarkers. I think because it's not available to all patients that we treat to do the CMR with these techniques. But the idea is to understand the subgroups that are able to respond well compared to those, to identify each patient we should treat, or which patients maybe it's too late to treat, because the idea is to treat not undetermined form, but also patients with mild cardiac form, try to control the disease progression.
And do you modify the dose or the treatment based on the CMR parameters? Let's say, I don't know, you have a patient that you think it's inflamed, and then you notice a significant drop in the T2 or a significant change. Would that modify the duration of your treatment?
We continue following up. And the idea is those have a high responding, we expect better clinical evolution over time. On the other hand, those that have no response, we try to correlate with some biomarkers that predict maybe progress over time. The idea to use images, because the progress spent years or decades, we try to predict early. Those have no response that is at high risk for progression to dilate the cardiomyopathy.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And Carmina, I have a question about the patients who, or the study participants, for both the CMR and the PET part. Were these cohorts that had been diagnosed with Chagas disease officially for a long time before they entered the study, or were all of these people newly screened and diagnosed for Chagas disease?
For the second study that we use PET and CMR, we received this patient for the blood bank, the majority of them.
Oh, yes, I remember.
And they just have the diagnosis, but we go to the epidemiological history. They live in the remote areas, but we have like many patients that we just have the diagnosis now.
And did especially with some of the people who had worsening changes on PET imaging, have you yet done any controlling for cardiac medications? You know, for people who are on beta blockers, etc.
Yeah, one of these patients developed worsened PET and then developed atrial fibrillation. We start treatment for heart failure. But so far, we not translate the PET findings in clinical management. We try to understand better. We continue to the guideline-based treatment of these patients regard of the PET-CT findings. But at least for 2 patients, we saw clinically they progress, worse ECG, and one patient has to start with like 50% of ejection fraction, and now decrease like close to 39, 40. So we raise the hypothesis that these patients may progress too. But I think it's too early to have this idea yet.
And I see, Jeff, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, and thanks for the great talk. Just from a clinical standpoint, I don't read any of these. I don't read radiology. It just, I haven't, I just read the reports. So my question is really about when you are training new people, either cardiologists or radiologists who are going to be reading these for Chagas cardiomyopathy, how much training has to go into reading these and understanding them? Is it something that is fairly easy to pick up, or does it take a lot of effort to read them well?
Well, good question. I think because if you have patients have an indeterminate form, it's a normal echo, usually, it's not take too much time. But I think the most difficult is to see regional contractility abnormality, usually in the base of inferior wall, ipsilateral wall. And to look at the apical aneurysm, you should have some special views aimed posteriorly to identify well the left ventricular apex and rule out thrombus. Sometimes it's just a small clot inside the apical aneurysm, it's able to cause the stroke. And sometimes the echo is a misses image. So for patients with Chagas heart disease, Chagas cardiomyopathy, takes more time to training and practice to identify these important hallmark findings.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up question from that. Some of the cardiologists that I've talked to here at UCSF that are working up cases, they've said, you know, they're working up sarcoid versus Chagas cardiomyopathy. For someone who's seen a lot of Chagas cardiomyopathy and have this type of imaging and scans available, have you been able to sort of differentiate those two entities, or is it still very difficult? Is there an amount of training or review of different different presentations that really lets you see Chagas cardiomyopathy with these sort of techniques?
I think Chagas cardiomyopathy with infiltrative disease like sarcoidosis, amyloidosis, yes? This is your question.
Yes. Yeah. Like how how good have you gotten in seeing a lot of these cases in differentiating these where other clinicians who may be less trained in seeing these things can may not be able to differentiate them as well?
Right. Yeah, I think because if present like with heart failure, it's hard to differentiate because the clinical picture between the two conditions are the same. But related to Chagas, I think we have high ventricular arrhythmias, complex with ventricular tachycardia is usually 24-hour hold. We have many arrhythmias. And by analyze the echo images, we have the thickness of ventricular wall is in Chagas disease is not thickening compared to the other infiltrative diseases. And Chagas can affect more frequently the right ventricular function and unless it's an advanced stage, both atrial are dilated too. But to take look at the ventricular walls, we can see less thickening compared to the other sarco and other amyloidosis diseases.
That's good to know. Just in terms of these things, I should look at more of our scans ourselves and familiarize myself with these types of images that I just haven't had to see or look at in a long time.
You can come to Brazil and our university, we see Chagas every single day. So just 1 week is enough to practice all.
Thank you for the offer.
Carmina, when you've done the analysis between your three groups, the ones who, the group that responds, the group that seems to stay flat, and the group that seems to be progressing, are there any epidemiological or demographic factors that you found that are associated with those different groups? For example, are the people who progress older than the people who don't progress, or is there a male-female difference, or are you able to assess, you know, how long people have been exposed to vector-borne transmission over time? You know, is there anything else that seems to distinguish them besides the markers that you're showing us?
Great question, Carrie. Great question. We just focus too much in imaging, and now we don't analyze the well, especially because we have like 53 cases just for subgroup analysis. Maybe you have no power to see, but you try to at least to describe the cluster related to the variables, gender, if the epidemiology, the time to diagnosis. I think comorbidities. I think would be a great analysis that it should be done. Thank you for pointing this out.
Any other questions from the audience? Speak now or forever hold your peace. If not, Carmina, thank you so much for that lovely talk. For everybody, we will be posting the recording eventually. So I'll let everybody know. And if anybody has additional questions, please email me and I will make sure that Carmina gets them. So thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you everybody to be here. It's a great pleasure.